Hey, welcome to the Road and Morale podcast. So do you ever feel like screaming out in the office, on Zoom or outside the school gates? For the love of God, come on, really? Then if this is you and you're looking for an honest, fun and frank podcast on life and business, then sit back and listen to me, Rona Morale. I'll be bringing great people on the show to talk, share and debate their life experiences and business challenges, keeping the show unpolished, but in a fun and unique British style, with sarcasm, tenacity, or maybe a few swear words or tears. This podcast keeps it real, honest, raw, and removes the bullshit in the only way I know how, through authenticity and getting shit done. Think of it less like the Housewives of New York or Towie with the lipo and drama, and more like the house lives of the real world. I hope you'll take something away to be better informed, laugh, smile, or maybe even finally getting the confidence to shout, come on really. So enjoy. Hey Elle, welcome to the Rona Morale podcast. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Lovely to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're very, very welcome. And for the listeners, I'm delighted to have Elle on the Rona Morale podcast today. We met a few months ago through mutual contacts, and I just, I suppose, hit it off with Elle straight away because of the work she was doing in music, sustainability and climate. So Elle is first and foremost a music artist, but also a creative director. I know that you're really passionate about regenerative fashion and so has become an ambassador in that space, and also an environmentalist. So like many people that I interview, you've got your fingers in lots of different areas of focus, but you are also have been chosen to be an advisor with the UNESCO Unip, not UNESCO, Unip, the kindness campaign, and you're going to speak there as well as sing. Is that right, in October?
That's right. Thank you for the introduction. Well, actually, it is UNESCO MGIEP. So you got it right. I also do some advisory for Unip and have worked on some projects there. So I guess there's so many UN agencies and different subsidiary partners. So I can, all good, basically covered both of them.
Right, you've covered me there.
Across the board as well. But yeah, I am going to be speaking and performing at the Third World Youth Conference on October the 2nd as part of a beautiful campaign called Kindness Matters. We're collecting over 1 million stories of kindness and really showcasing how kindness can lead the way to achieving the 2030 Agenda and the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Because, if we can be happy and kind and treat others in that, with that in mind, I think we make better decisions.
Yeah, brilliant. And listen, we're definitely going to come back on and talk about that, because the SDG goals can often be seen as, planting trees and carbon, but often there's so much more to it than that. So definitely want to dive in more around that, and also to talk to you about that youth angle, because really our next generation, I'm a bit old and fusty now, but it is the vital of the youth coming through, what we can empower them with. So I definitely want to talk more on that. But also, it goes without saying that, as part of that introduction as well, that with your music, you've had 2 songs out now. I know the second one, which was Hope, is out on all mainstream platforms. And you've had some great responses, actually, haven't you, from the likes of The Clash, Harper's Bazaar, The Times. So tell me a little bit more about your 2 singles, and if you could what was the rationale behind them? Are they all around that kind of kindness vibe, or?
I think, music is definitely a flow state. I love creating music because I think that it's such a pure form of communication and art. I love, that feeling of just letting almost the universe kind of speak to you. You're very much a vessel as an artist, I believe, or at least my way of creating. There's lots of different ways. Actually, it was interesting because I put out a very indie EP, literally very self-made, on SoundCloud. Through that, for my first single, Lacoste had got in touch and wanted me to soundtrack a campaign that they had happening. And I think that was a really interesting way as an artist to start, because it sort of usually a sync happens after or after you've got some traction. So suddenly I thought, oh my goodness, don't even have a manager or a label. What have I got to do? Was just in a very sort of moment in my life where I was like, I'm going to say yes to whatever comes. So I had, first of all, it was a perfume commercial, and I was like, Yes. And then I found out it was Lacoste, and I saw the commercial. It was so beautiful. And I thought, wow, this is exciting. So that was the first single, but I guess it was almost premature because I didn't have certain things behind me. So I only recently found out that I'd got 100,000 streams on Apple for that, and I hadn't marketed it, and silly things. But now I think, wow, if I'd had like any support around that, we had like, you know, I had major labels sort of getting in touch with me from that, and thought, oh my goodness, I need to write more. So I sort of kept everything, did my BBC introducing session. My first live radio show was live on radio, which is very typical me, jumping in deep ends.
I love that,
and then basically have been writing for the last 2 years, but also really felt the responsibility at that point really strongly, because you get fast fashion endorsements come through your DMs as soon as there's any sort of like tickling that this might go somewhere. And I was so conscious that I wanted to use my platform for good, and I started to research the kind of brands that I would be representing, and ultimately they just weren't representing things that I could in any way align with. So that then, strangely, by saying no, led me to open up this whole world and learn so much, and find myself in the jungles of the Amazon with wonderful people like Ohad Weaver, who you now know and work with. And we've supported on a campaign together, and it's been an absolute awakening. And this was just before sustainability has become popular, so now it's almost an asset by accident, but it came from such a pure place. And then hoping, just I think with the global pandemic, it felt like we all needed hope more than ever, and I just kept seeing one of the only positive narratives being hope now, like hope. And I thought, oh my goodness, I've got this song that I actually wrote before this happened. One of the first things I wrote, now's the time to let this fly. Maybe it will resonate with some people that need this right now. Of course, timelines being what they are, it was like on the cusp of us coming out of lockdown, but I think we always need hope, and especially for the environment. So I think it's a positive narrative, but it's quite a real one, because it will show some vulnerability, and how, you know, through hoping we can turn that into strength.
And how hard did you find it? So as I've never written music, but I can only imagine as you're writing music, you're hoping you get discovered or found. How hard was it to say no to what could have been some really big opportunities?
It wasn't hard. I think financially, when you're starting out, if I'm truly honest, because I have a career in film as well. So I'd actually sort of dropped what was a very blossoming career in film, working for the likes of CNN, which is really unheard of when you're just out of uni, and doing, you know, I was directing for Copenhagen Fashion Week, really big things for being early in my career. And so to then turn that down and become an independent artist at the beginning of when this happened, it's become a lot more established now, thankfully, and I'm very fortunate for those platforms. But at the beginning, it was definitely, as long as I can survive here and sustain myself, I can say no. But I can understand why some people need healthy alternatives on how to monetize their platforms responsibly. And so there is a pressure on brands to be ethical, because it's not just, it's about top down and bottom up. I don't think you can say the models that are promoting bad products are totally to blame. It's really everybody can play a part, which is why I think kindness matters, which is why hope matters, which is why we need to turn that into positive action. But that was the only difficult bit for me. The rest was a no-brainer, but I couldn't do it. I'm very principle bound, so if something doesn't feel right in my heart, I cannot do it. Literally can't. So that element of it was easy.
Well, no, fair play to you, and kudos for doing that. And likewise, actually, the fact that you've kind of given up a very blossoming career in sort of film, and then what made you tip from saying no to that and open up into the music? What was it?
I think it was a series of events. I think that my parents are super musical. My mum was the first female piano tuner for Steinway and Sons, which at the time, I mean, it's a very male-dominated career, so it's a really atypical role for a beautiful young woman to be making grand pianos. And she's got some wonderful stories, like Frank Sinatra buying her dinner, and she's in the Abbey Road book. And I remember being a kid and being in the Abbey Road studios with her. You know, she would take me sneakily to work sometimes if she could, if it was like a rehearsal she was sitting in on. And I remember I loved the Spice Girls, and knowing that they'd recorded there was just like, wow.
That was it.
But they were really critical in a beautiful way, which is that if I won a race or I did something that wasn't music, they were just so in awe. But with music, they'd always be like, that's good. Have you thought about, like it would be more constructive. And I was like, So I kind of wanted to do something that amalgamated music, storytelling, because I loved English, psychology and philosophy at school, and film felt like the natural route where I could take that into a direction that still incorporated music. But I think it just kept coming back to me. The more I became an adult, the more I realized I was a musician. I couldn't get away from it. It was everywhere. And so even at CNN, I remember we have library music to use, and I was like fiddling around for my uni piece. I'd actually created a track with 150 author options, so it was interactive, like an interactive Gap commercial style.
Okay, yeah.
With color and sound, and so I knew kind of how to quasi produce. I'm not a producer. I have amazing producers, thankfully, that helped me with my ideas, but even then I said, oh, I have these little ideas, like, and I really just wasn't feeling the library music we were using. They loved it so much. I ended up with my first Sennheisers and Logic, at my desk. So I was making music for my shows, which again was just like this absolute dream.
Amazing.
But more and more music became front and center. And there was one defining moment, which was that I got gifted a digital piano, which I can see right now. I'm looking at it. I wish I could show you.
Oh, amazing.
By my mum for my birthday, out of the blue. And she's still a piano tuner. So she must have, we used to get them like stray dogs in the house. Like we had 7 at one point.
Yeah.
Get rid of one. She couldn't, she'd take it in. And so I imagine this must have been the case, because it's very beautiful, but random and generous gift out of the blue. And I just couldn't leave it alone. I was like, oh my God, this feels like home to me. If I never earn a penny again, I have to do music, at least try, I'm still young enough to try this. And I was brave enough for the first time to take the risk, because I'm actually an introvert as well as an extrovert. So I would have been way too scared to do it before I'd matured into my own self. And then I look back and think, well, if I've been doing this since I was a kid, where would I be? But I think it's really important that you are who you are because of the decisions you've made. And hopefully it makes me slightly more mature as an artist, because I've had some experiences.
And is your mom still quite critical and not critical? That's the wrong word.
She is.
Okay, yeah. Let's be honest. I'm just trying to think of me being a mum. I'd be like, right, do you realise?
No, she said something brilliant the other day, which was that I played her a demo of something I'm working on, and she said, quote, "That's 100% better than hoping." And I was like, oh, okay, cool.
Wow.
But she said it with like just pure honesty, and like, I was like, thank goodness that the next stuff she believes it even more. She didn't mean it in a negative way at all. It's just she just got an ear for music, and she has her own style and taste, and she's not afraid to, she's not there saying, oh my God, you're amazing. She's there saying, I really believe in that you can do anything that you mind to in life, and I'm going to support you 100%. And I really think, especially as a new artist, there's something strong here. But she'll like things that aren't necessarily the things that I'm releasing yet, or it's I love honesty though. It makes me work harder.
Yeah, and I think actually it's so subjective, isn't it? It's like art. I'm forever telling my children, they go, well, I don't like that piece of art, or that art's not very good. I'm like, well, that's in your eyes or your ears. It's very different to everyone, isn't it? So obviously, as you've been going through the music, and as we mentioned, we kind of bonded over Sam and the Amazon. What's made you, because over the duration you've raised nearly been involved in £1.5 million worth towards specific projects and climate. What keeps you going in that space? Because obviously we talked about the SDG goals, and there are a lot of them. And your focus obviously is on kindness, but how do you then pick the projects that you want to work with in terms of conservation?
That is becoming more and more difficult. I could almost get emotional saying it, because I'm having to say no to things now because I'm so busy. That I have made the mistake before where I wanted to put the environment first no matter what, even at the expense of myself. And actually, one thing I have learned, and it's a controversial statement, but it's taken me to learn the hard way, is that if you don't sustain yourself, you have not as much to give. Because I would literally gift my time, spend like almost like beyond a full-time job. And I was like, hang on a minute, this isn't part of what I'm preaching. Everyone needs to feel good, have their human experience. And I believe, nature, if you look at a tree, it takes 70% for what it needs for itself and gives 30% to, surrounding trees that might need some more nutrient support. And I kind of think that we can learn so much from nature, that I would like to think that I live with that 70-30 principle in mind, where 70%, and everything's still connected. It's never that I'm like off brand or off the subject, but 70% of the time I'm trying at the moment, and this is new, literally very new way of thinking for me, but it's really important for me to sustain myself and to grow. And the bigger voice I have, hopefully, if that happens, the bigger voice I'll have for everything else. But yeah, 70% of the time for me and 30% for everything else. My manager would tell me that I definitely haven't achieved that yet. It's definitely more like 60% for everyone else. But yeah, I think it is a really hard thing to do, but I am trying to think about high impact now as well. And I've kind of always been in that way of mind, but I'll think about projects that aren't always the prettiest projects, but will be very high impact. And I have some that I can talk to you about in that respect. But yeah, that's kind of how I define it. And I'm really grateful that I get to work with the United Nations on projects. That's a real honor, and something that happened through like genuinely like raising money and knowing what I was up to and really helping. You know, it's really about supporting them. It's not about anything else other than that. But it does give you a lot of insight and expertise, because we really learn so much from one another. And then you're mixing with people at the top of their game, and you get to understand and have access to information that is just so eye-opening. And then you can share that as a communicator. So I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, I was going to say, actually, having, you know, with UNESCO or UNEP, I think anything with a UN in front of it, I think the moment you're at that level as well, you're able to have a relative amount of confidence in the credibility of the project or the cause. And therefore, you, of course, you still do your homework, but you can then speak with confidence as well. And then, like you say, it just keeps chipping away at all that levels of scale to drive more and more awareness. And actually, that's a really interesting concept about sort of 70-30. And I don't doubt, knowing you as I know you already, that you are there yet. I don't doubt that yet. And I'm not sure, even me at 44, I've been saying it for many years, I'm not sure I'm going to get there. But it is something that I think we should all start to chip away at. And I support you, and I applaud you for getting to that point of saying, I have to sustain myself. And I think I probably learnt that later on in life than you. So it's great you've got there early, and there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with that.
Oh yeah, and our health
self-care
so much right now. And I think that's also been an eye-opening global impact for everybody, is to appreciate that our health, we can never take it for granted, no matter how healthy we are even. And so I think that with that rule, it's also about supporting yourself. And actually, I think sometimes if you do that wisely, your 30% is the equivalent to almost 100%, because you actually have the time, you're not multitasking to the point of, burning yourself out, and you can sustain that proportion. But yeah, I'm learning all the time, and that's what I'd like to think that I could do, because I always just think, if in doubt, what would nature do? And actually, I think there's so much we can learn from her still, that we just are a little bit blind to it, because we get so constructed by our everyday lives.
No, absolutely. And there's not a day that goes by I'm not really mesmerized by something that I see on social or LinkedIn that makes me really think and take a step back and, save the page and go back to it again, because it's something I'm looking outside now into, my garden, and you just take advantage of what's there. So anyways, tell me more about the kindness campaign and what's going to be happening in October. Tell me more about it and how that's bringing those SDG goals to the forefront.
Well, as I say, this particular project is with so UNESCO, but the specific partner is Mahatma Gandhi Institute for Education and Peace. And so there's a drive on kindness, but also obviously the youth conference being the stage for that particular campaign. And I was invited by a good friend of mine who's absolutely a phenomenal human being. Her name is Tessie Dinosaur, and she is she's actually formerly Princess of Luxembourg, but she's also just a patron of some incredible foundations, and her focus is on education. And obviously that's one of the SDGs, fair education for all. But I think that it's interesting because it's a different way of looking at the same thing for me as an environmentalist. And it's actually super refreshing, because I think when you've been working on a campaign for a couple of years, or a particular project, client, agency, sometimes your context, what you can offer, needs a bit of a refresh, because you need different experiences to be able to bring more to the table. And so actually it couldn't have come at a better time, because I do try and live my life through kindness, and I'm, nobody's perfect. But I just think what a great way to look at sustainability is that actually if we're kind, we're sustainable, because actually you don't make bad choices when you're acting through pure compassion and kindness. And I think the other thing I like is the idea of turning our hopes to action. And I think, again, through kindness, we can do that if we've got a way of being together. And of course, it's a lovely narrative to bring my music to the equation, because it's definitely complementary. But really, what the drive more than ever is to collect these stories of kindness. So definitely I can share a link with you, maybe for the audience.
Love to.
Direct where they can get involved and share. There's no big or small kind of story that doesn't matter. Every single one counts. So I'm happy to share that with you, but that's really what we'd love to do. And we want to create the first International Day of Kindness. So that the idea is that these a million stories, I think we're up to 600,000 over the mark now.
Amazing. Well done.
And also we want 100,000 pledges just to support the International Day of Kindness. And yeah, that's what we're hoping for. And I think the day we're hoping to bring that to action would be November the 13th.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, actually, definitely send me them through when we go live with the podcast. I'll add those links in. And is there any age limit to people coming in and doing their act of kindness? Or
no, absolutely not. I mean, I think there is definitely in terms of our platform, it's youth centric for the conference, the first conference in October the 2nd. But I don't believe in age anyway, if I'm honest. I think that, I felt 40 at 4 and I'm not 40 yet, but I always still feel 4. So I think everything's spectrum and much more fluid than we'd like to think. So absolutely no age restriction.
Okay, fantastic. I might even get my girls on it and just see
that would be amazing. And I think it's about paying it forward. So if you do it and then you share it with one person, then you actually can escalate this global kindness movement, which is brilliant.
No, absolutely. And you know what? It is so true, because there's often times where little things, I'll come out of a shop and I'll have bought an extra sandwich and drink and whatever and give it to somebody outside. And at first my children were very much, why are you doing that, mummy? Now it's, mummy, you haven't bought a sandwich for someone outside. So it is that kind of those little things that you can do that impact, other people. So I'll be delighted to kind of get involved and then pay it forward as well.
Yeah. And the selfish thing actually is that it feels good to be good. Like it might feel like effort, a bit like going to the gym, but actually it feels wonderful to do those kind of things. And I went through, homelessness is actually if I had more time, it's something I definitely want to look at in the future, but it's heartbreaking. And yeah, I think all of those acts go really noticed, because I think the worst thing we can ever do to anyone is treat them like they're invisible. And for me, it's all about rehabilitation and communication and giving people a way back into where they want to be. So yeah, I think that's a lovely thing to do. I do it myself, but not as frequently as I maybe should. So maybe you'll encourage me to do it the next time I'm in a shop.
You'll think of it now. But there's an amazing concept, isn't it, in Japan or Copenhagen, where you just have these libraries and you rock up and you just go and talk to a stranger and you sit and talk for 20 minutes, and rather than go into a library and read a book. And I absolutely adore that concept, because I just think total freedom to go and talk to somebody who you don't know and what that could lead to.
Yeah. And also I just think, I love Copenhagen because I just think they're so forward thinking. I remember they were actually a big part of my journey in sustainability, because I was kindly asked through my former executive producer at CNN to direct. He was away and he would usually direct their visuals for Copenhagen Fashion Week. And I remember doing that and having the most wonderful experience. Not only was it so organized, so beautiful, so innovative when it comes to fashion, but so effortlessly sustainable. Even then, must have been over 2 years ago now. And I was really shocked that we wouldn't just naturally be like this. And how can, Copenhagen, how can they be so far ahead? What can we do to catch up? Because this is just the way things should be. So ideas like that, it might not be to do with sustainability, but they are to do with kindness. And it's about that circularity, and it's about every person mattering and every element of nature and ourselves.
Yeah, because I think that's a key thing for me. It's not like the technology and the knowledge isn't out there. And it's not like Copenhagen's a new city, you know, of 20, 50 years old. So yeah, it's really energizing when you're thrown into something and you go, wow, this is it. This is left. I remember going to the Green School in Bali and just being totally blown away by its philosophy, its students. Everything was sustainable, what they grew, you know, no flushing toilets, everything. I literally wanted to move to Bali and put my kids into this school. And when you find something like that, it's like, how do I emulate and let more and more people know the art of the possible?
Absolutely. I like that, the art of the possible. I think that, I don't know. I think that we can learn just so much from how other people do things. And I actually used to be a little bit against travel, which is a shame, because like for my, early 20s, again, I don't believe in age, but like my very early 20s, I almost refused to go away because I was like, this isn't sustainable. Like it sounds crazy, and it isn't when we do things excessively. Yeah. But one thing I've changed my mind on is that actually we can make a difference. I literally would only travel with work. But now I genuinely believe that we should experience different cultures and different people and interact. And I do believe that if we can go into, make sure that tourism is as eco-friendly as possible by the choices of where we stay and how we act. And even just our voice, whether it's when we get on the airline messaging them saying, there's a bit too much plastic here, can you like all voice that we can have. But I think to be alive in this particular era where we can travel, if done wisely and moderately, can really help our experience of the world and help our kindness and help us do better. I didn't realize that I needed to go away until recently, because it's been in London. I mean, it's very heavy sometimes, very great for work, very up in our heads. But it's not until I was actually immersed in pure nature, sunshine, vitamin D, the sea, I sort of came back to life a bit. And I thought, because I had coronavirus quite recently, I had it in July. So although I, I'm recovered, thankfully, and stuff, like,
good.
You need those natural elements, I think, sometimes to be your best self. So, yeah.
And again, it's great to hear, you recognize that there is a need for it. And I know, after I left uni, I went away for a year and I, did the typical backpacking. But I have to say, it's one of those things that has stayed with me my entire life, because it showed me how I could be deliriously happy and in love with nothing. I have no money or any possessions, and how it just completely opened my eyes up to so many different ways and cultures. And even to this day, it questions, what I do and how I feel and how I bring up my children. So I think continue to travel with all your might. Yes, you can do it as sustainably as you can, and there's so many great holidays and projects and things we can do that for me, I would love more people to open their eyes outside of this white middle class England, and it's such an incredible place of energy and passion that you can't go through life and not see it.
Yeah, and it funds different, through tourism, if it's done responsibly, which is 100. I mean, it is moving in that direction in a lot of places, at least I would go. But I think that, it does support countries that otherwise wouldn't have as much of like an industrial sort of like push for economic sort of thriving and survival. And so I do think it's important, but I do think it still requires a lot of work, because travel, especially with plastic, I get so uncomfortable when I'm on a plane and there's just plastic everywhere, plastic this, plastic that. And even with the coronavirus test that you have to do, plastic this, plastic that. But I think we just need to keep pushing for people to make better choices on our behalf when we can't make them for ourselves with regards to those things. And I really think that there's so many alternatives coming to market with biodegradable plastic, so that we don't actually, plastic was always made for a reason. It's very good if we want it long life, like forever. But if we don't, then honestly, we really need to get up to scratch with biodegradable alternatives. And there are so many available now, which excites me.
There are, and there's some great packaging forms using mushrooms and fungi now. And again, the technology is there. All we need is scale. So I take, for example, an espresso. If Nespresso moved to non-virgin aluminium pods, for example, then that would give it scale, then everyone else could, and then it would be cheaper for everyone. And so it's there. It's us putting that pressure on those tipping points. And I don't know if you know a lady called Sian Sutherland, but from Plastic Planet, she is a phenomenal lady. You should check her out. She's absolutely fantastic.
But I have heard of her, yeah.
She's absolutely brilliant. Absolutely adore her. And yeah, I think it's about that. What can we say and do that puts, and what I love now is hearing the younger generations, and even my daughters will say something in a restaurant or on a bus, and you're like, brilliant. They get it's just part of their
100%. I mean, I think that it definitely is something that what's lovely, actually, a lot of experts that I speak to that now become experts because they had like a platform originally in fashion, let's say, and now they represent sustainable fashion because they have quite a large voice. And it's so interesting to hear that in quite a few of those cases that it's the kids that put pressure on them and ask questions and, why are you doing this? And then suddenly this, I'm not a mother yet, but like, I guess the feeling as a mother, you want to be the best role model in the world. So I think there has been a healthy pressure that kids have put on parents to become better role models, because actually the kids are way more knowledgeable than most adults on this.
They are, and what I love about a child's innocence is it is that simply, why are you doing it like that? And we've all, even in my career, I've sat in boardrooms and kind of dropped that why moment, and you've got senior people who are highly experienced kind of do have a moment where they go, actually, I don't know, why are we doing it this way? But anyway, well, listen, I could talk a ton for this, but listen, I thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. It's been amazing to talk to you about the music, what you're doing in sustainable, where your passion lies, and it's so humbling to see that next generation coming through with it just being natural. It's not a trend, like you say, it's just part of what we need to be going forward. And so I wish you the best of luck with the single and also with the kindness campaign in October. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me, and speak to you very soon. Okay.
Awesome. Cheers, Elle. Bye.
Bye.
So that's it. You've made it. The show's over. Thank you for being with us. I hope you've been able to take something away, maybe solve a problem, or just know you're not alone. Here's hoping it made you smile with a few laughs along the way. Please feel free to find me on all social media channels, and you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. Just search the Rona Morel podcast. Have an awesome day and see you next time.